Coach, how are we doing this afternoon?
Doing good, thanks.
All right, you ready to go?
I am, thank you.
All right, here we go. John Finn.
Hey, John.
Hi, buddy. Hi, Brian. Hey,
How
look,
you doing?
Brian, I'll bite the bullet for everybody. Ask you the questions that everybody wants to know.
Okay. Well, it's just you and me then today.
It's the quarterback situation. How's Cohn and Buckner looked in practice this week? And also, can you give us updates on Carmody and Heinisch too?
Yes. In our 2-minute drill yesterday, we had Cohn in there. And I thought he did a pretty good job. He's ahead of where I thought he would be on Wednesday. Obviously he's got today and tomorrow. They've kind of, I think Drew and Jack have, kind of split the first team reps, and then we've continued to work Tyler's package that he's traditionally had in weeks past. So we're getting all three of them ready right now. Carmody has been getting a lot of work at left tackle. He too is improving each week. So, we think we're in the right kind of position for him to be able to play on Saturday at left tackle, Mike Carmody. Oh, and Heinisch. Kurt, he went and saw a specialist, and he was cleared from having any kind of, head injury. It was something different. So he's excited, but he won't play this weekend. And we expect to have him back next week.
Tim Priester, you're up next.
Brian, you said, like, somebody asked you about Jack Cohn and input to you regarding Wisconsin. I get it, that's a player, but Marcus Freeman, Mike Mickens, and their knowledge of everything defensively with Cincinnati, how valuable has that been to you? And then also the evolution of Mike Denbrock as a play caller. How have you seen him change? I'm sure Desmond Ritter gives him a little bit more flexibility too.
Yeah, well, Tim, the reality of it is that we've been really working against this defense since last spring. And I can tell you this, that if you're just trying to prepare for it for 2 or 3 days, there's some complexity to it. That's where we've gotten the insight more than anything else. I mean, Mike and Marcus are not bringing anything to the table other than the installation of the defense that we've gone against, as I mentioned earlier, since last spring. So that's the knowledge base from that perspective. Relative to Mike, there's no doubt that a really good quarterback that has arm talent and the ability to escape helps you as an offensive coordinator. But Mike, look, I haven't been around many guys that are as detailed and hardworking and get a sense of the game and how the game needs to be played than Mike. So, we're up against a great challenge there, a really good offense, an outstanding quarterback, and an accomplished and experienced play caller in Mike.
Eric Hansen, you're up next.
Brian, I have to start with, I'm very jealous of the way that Finn so completely handled the injury question. I do.
Well, you know what? Listen, I think you're going to have a little bit of a conversation because he seems to be stealing a little bit of your thunder.
Okay. Well, I'm going to steal a little bit of it back. My first part of my question is a follow-up on Blake Fisher's timetable, how he's doing. And then the second part of the question is, what did you learn from the Caleros Pike, Reese Golson dynamics that might help you with this dynamic with your multiple quarterbacks moving forward?
Well, let's start with Blake. That injury is generally something that takes you, through most of the season, if not the entire season. So, we're not in a position where we're thinking about him, each week. It's kind of like go through your process, make sure that you're not missing any rehab. if Rob Hunt comes to me, in week, 10 and says, hey, we're well ahead of schedule, then, we'll get our hopes up then. But this is something where, it's not even part of what we think about on a day-to-day basis that Blake is going to be back with us during the season. As it relates to the quarterback situation, each one of them, I think, Eric, is so different in that they bring, different traits, and, the offense, has to be geared towards, what their strengths and what your offensive capabilities are. So, I just think more than anything else, it's about how and what is in the best interest of your football team, and in particular your offensive production, and how you use those guys. It was easier for me, at different junctions to use guys that were dissimilar than similar, because you could clearly kind of carve out what they were going to do. And when they're kind of similar, how does one better serve what you're doing than the other? But when they are dissimilar, then it makes it a little bit easier to kind of carve out their path. I think that's probably what stands out the most to me in my experience of dealing with multiple quarterbacks.
As a reminder, if you have a question for Coach Kelly, please use the raise hand function. We'll go to Pete Sampson next.
Hey, Brian. I was interested if it's Cone or Pine, does the call sheet for Tommy change? And then you mentioned sort of strengths, and I think we can all watch Jack Cone and see his strengths, and see Tyler Buckner and see his strengths. Drew Pine is maybe in between. So you could describe what makes Pine good, like what the strengths of his game are.
I would say probably just a little bit more escapability, and I think more than anything else, he just has ability to find people on the move a little bit more than maybe Jack. Jack's going to be in a much more of a progression read, but they're much more similar than they are dissimilar. But that's probably where I give it. I think Jack's a little bit, probably a little bit more in terms of experience relative to seeing things, third down pressures, things like that. So there's kind of a give take there, Pete, in terms of what each guy brings, to the lineup.
Patrick Angle, you're up next.
Brian, on Howard Cross, and look at him and maybe a little undersized for a nose tackle, but it doesn't really seem to phase him in a sense, or hinder his ability to get past interior linemen. How do you think he makes up for that, and what's made him fit in that role pretty well?
Extreme first step quickness. I mean, he is, off the ball, very, very difficult to get your hands on him. So, it starts there. He's about 280 pounds, but he's very, very strong, strongest hands that we have for an interior lineman. You saw how quick Lacey is off the ball as well. Those two guys are as quick as we have, that hover in that 275, 280 range. But Howard's hands are so heavy, and his first step quickness is as good as we've had here at Notre Dame.
Angelo DiCarlo, you're next.
Brian, two questions about quarterbacks on each side. For Buckner, how much more is he practicing now, or maybe his workload has increased again relative to last week when he was trying to come back from the injury, and then where he is, in comparison to where he was practicing, 3 weeks ago pre-injury? And then for Desmond Ridder, what's the biggest challenges he brings with, the success he's had over his career?
Yeah, Buckner's back to where he was going into, where he got a really good sense of the game against Toledo. So, and obviously Purdue. So I think we're back to that level and hope to increase that as we go into next week. We wanted to make sure he was, physically feeling great. He looks great this week. So I think he's back to that level, and then we'll start to build back, more inventory into what we're doing offensively with him. As it relates to Ritter, he's got the ability to put the ball down the field. I think his deep balls are as good as we've seen in a long time. I mean anybody that we've played in a long time. He throws the ball down the field very, very well. And then his ability to run. I mean, those are the two things that separate him from a lot of the quarterbacks that we've played, is the ability to push the ball down the field, deep balls, and that's what he wants to do. And then his ability to run. Those two things are, and I mentioned Perkins from Virginia earlier in the year. Perkins threw the ball pretty good against us in the first half down the field and had the escapability. We needed to keep him in the pocket to have a better second half against Virginia, which we did. We'll need to do the same thing with Ritter.
Chuck Freebie is up next.
Brian, how much do you play up protecting home field and the fact that you're an underdog in this game? Does that motivate your team at all? Do you use that as motivation?
Not really. I mean, they understand, what protecting the home field is. I mean, they've done it 26 times in a row. This is much more about two top 10 teams, and, you got to go out and attack your opponent. I mean, you can't sit around and wait. I mean, this is a heavyweight fight. If you're just going to dance around and wait, you're going to get knocked out. This is a really good football team. So you got to come out swinging. You got to be aggressive, and you got to take it to your opponent. When you have two top 10 teams playing, you better come out ready to go, or you're going to get knocked out.
All right, we have one final call for questions. Anyone else have a question? All right, Coach, we're all set. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.